You stopped texting, you didn't chase, you didn't explain. And now something shifted. She hasn't said a word, but you can feel it. Her energy has changed, because your silence isn't just absence, it's pressure. And whether she admits it or not, the quiet is getting loud. This isn't about ignoring her. This is about seizing you. And in that space, without your reassurance, she's left with nothing but her own thoughts. And those thoughts, they start asking the questions you no longer answer. In today's video, we'll explore exactly what runs through her mind when you don't reach out and why your silence, when grounded in self-respect, becomes your loudest message. Number 1. I thought he'd text by now. In the beginning, she assumes the silence is temporary. She thinks you're just cooling off, that this is just another quiet spell before you cave like you always did. Maybe by the end of the week, maybe tomorrow, maybe tonight. Because let's be honest, before, that's how the pattern went. She'd pull away and eventually you'd chase, you'd reach out, soften the distance, reset the connection. She counted on that. But this time feels different. The hours stretch, the days pass, the notification she expected never shows, and slowly, it starts to hit her. You're not playing the same role anymore. The silence is not a tactic. It's a turning point. You're not reaching out, not because you're angry, or trying to manipulate her emotions, but because you've finalized yourself. You've stepped off the emotional treadmill, and whether she realizes it or not, she's starting to feel the weight of that decision. She replays old conversations in her mind, checks your last messages, scrolls through photos she once skimmed past, all because your absence has created space. And in that space, her illusion of control starts to break. She wonders if you've moved on, if someone else now hears the laughter she used to hear. I fear peace. This new version of you is no longer tied to her validation. A Stoic man doesn't disappear to prove a point. He becomes unavailable because he's learned the value of his energy. Like Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That's what you're doing now. Not seeking revenge, but reclaiming alignment. And so when she thinks I thought he'd text by now, she's not just wondering about your message. She's wondering where your energy went, why it no longer circles back to her. And that quiet realization, that's what lingers longer than any text ever could. Let her sit with the silence. It speaks louder than chasing Gaver did. Number 2. Did he just move on? Doubt, did he just move on? Starts to creep in. She wonders if your silence means you've already moved on, that maybe she wasn't as unforgettable as she thought. At first, it's just a flicker of curiosity. But over time, that thought starts to echo louder, because when you don't reach out, you disrupt the pattern she had grown used to, the emotional rhythm that once gave her comfort. Your good mornings, your check-ins, your availability is suddenly gone. And that absence, it speaks volumes. This isn't about playing hard to get or some manipulation tactic. It's about reclaiming balance. You're no longer orbiting around her. You've chosen to return to your center. And that shift, it's powerful. She starts asking herself, did I overestimate my hold on him? Was he stronger than he thought? Is he really gone? Here's the thing. When a man truly begins to move forward, it doesn't always look loud. It looks like peace, like less texting, like more purpose. And that stillness, if it's real, can shake someone far more than any emotional outburst ever could. The Stoics understood this deeply. As Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You've chosen not to chase what isn't chasing you. You've chosen self-respect over validation. That's not coldness, it's clarity. Let me give you an example. A man stops reaching out after months of being the emotional pillar in a one-sided dynamic. He doesn't send a goodbye message. He doesn't explain himself. He simply focuses on his own growth, his own healing. Weeks go by. Then she sees a photo of him smiling, calm, living, and suddenly the question hits her, did he just let me go? That uncertainty, that shift in emotional power, it lingers longer than any argument. So, if you're watching this wondering whether your silence is making a difference, just know it already has. Not because it's a tactic, but because it reflects a truth she never expected, that you're no longer waiting. You've stopped trying to prove your worth. And that realization is often what makes her question hers. Let that sink in. Your silence isn't a tactic, it's a reflection of your growth. And when a man stops chasing, the shift is felt more than any words could ever say. If this resonates, drop a comment below and type, "I choose clarity over chaos." Don't forget to like the video. It helps spread this message to others on the same path. Now, let's move forward and see what happens when your stillness starts to stir something deeper in her. Number 3. Was he more valuable than I realized? Was he more valuable than I realized? Without the constant access to you to feel something deeper, not panic, not sadness, clarity. She's replaying memories, reevaluating moments, realizing the man she pushed away wasn't desperate. He was disciplined. You didn't get louder to prove your worth. You got quieter and let her come to her own conclusion. That's power. That's presence. That's Stoic restraint. And here's the shift that really stings for her. In the past, when things got shaky, she expected a reaction, a long message, an emotional explanation. But this time, nothing. Not because you don't feel, but because you have learned that peace isn't found in proving your value to someone who couldn't see it the first time. You stopped arguing for your place. You started walking in purpose. That silence, it's not empty. It speaks. It says, I no longer chase what isn't aligned with me. She begins to ask herself questions she never considered before. Did I overlook his depth? Was it too caught up in my own emotions to see his steadiness? And this isn't about regret alone. It's about recognition. She's seeing you now without the blur of tension. She realizes that what you gave was rare, not because it was flat, but because it was consistent. Calm, grounded. The way you listened, the way you didn't react to every storm, the way you stayed centered even when emotional waves crashed. That's what a Stoic man does. He doesn't force you known to value him. He simply becomes so grounded, so whole within himself, that his absence becomes louder than his presence ever tried to be. You chose self-respect over emotional reactivity. You didn't punish her with silence. You honored yourself with it. Imagine a man who, after being ghosted, doesn't spiral. He doesn't text, "Why did you disappear?" He doesn't post cryptic quotes. He just continues, grows, glows, learns a new skill, spends more time at the gym, becomes more peaceful. Weeks pass, and then she notices not just the glow-up, but the strength of a man who didn't crumble when connection was withdrawn. That's when the question creeps into her mind. Was he more valuable than I realized? And the answer for her might arrive too late. But for you, it doesn't matter because you already chose to move with clarity, not emotion. That's how a man becomes unforgettable, not by shouting his worth, but by embodying it quietly, stoically, completely. Number 4, he's probably with someone new. He's probably with someone new when her mind lacks answers. It fills in blanks. And in your silence, she starts to wonder, maybe you've moved on. Maybe there's another woman. Maybe your attention is now being poured into someone who values it, someone who didn't take it for granted. But here's what she doesn't understand. This isn't about replacing her. This isn't about revenge, rebounds, or making her jealous. It's about you finally choosing peace over chaos. You're not using anyone to feel better. You're not rushing into another connection to avoid sitting with your thoughts. No, you're redoing something far more powerful. You're not chasing what once hurt ya because that version of you, the one who tolerated confusion, who waited on read message, who accepted half-hearted effort, is no longer at the wheel. A Stoic doesn't run from pain by hiding behind someone new. He doesn't distract them with noise. He processes, he reflects, he transforms. He knows natural healing doesn't come from filling the void. It comes from facing it. And that's what you've done in your silence. You've confronted yourself, grown in the quiet, elevated from within. Picture a man sitting alone at the same cafe where he once waited for her. Same seat, same coffee, but something's different. His posture is straighter, his eyes clearer, no phone in hand, no checking messages, no looking around in anticipation. That's not loneliness, that's peace. That's someone who stopped making room for uncertainty. So, if she's assuming you're with someone new, it's because she doesn't know how powerful solitude can be. She doesn't understand that when a man truly detaches, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, it's not, oh, be with someone else. It's to become someone else, someone better, someone whole. And maybe one day she realized the most attractive thing about you was never who was on your arm. It was the way you stood tall, even when you stood alone. Number 5, why isn't he trying to fix this? If she was used to you, why isn't he trying to fix this? Being the one who always reached out first, who tried to smooth things over, who apologized just to keep the peace even when you weren't at fault. Then your silence now feels like a threat. But it's not. It's a shift, a recalibration. It's not that you've stopped caring, it's that you've stopped carrying it all on your own. For the first time, you've stepped out of the emotional tug-of-war, and the rope is suddenly limp in her hands. That silence she feels, it isn't punishment. It's the sound of you no longer exhausting yourself to hold something together that never had boftons on the other end. She's not used to this version of you. The man who no longer bends just to hold together something that was falling apart. On one side, she might be staring at her phone, replaying old habits, wondering, why hasn't he called? Why isn't he trying? But you know the answer. Because you finally grasped a truth many men overlook. Fixing what broke you isn't her job anymore, especially when you're the only one who ever brought the glue. You've probably been there before, drafting long messages at 2 a.m., pouring your heart out in paragraphs, hoping that if you just explained things well enough, clearly enough, loving, she'd finally see you, understand you, stay. But each time you sent those words into the void, you got silence, confusion, or worse, temporary attention that faded just as quickly. Each time you gave more than you got. Each time you walked away emptier, wondering what more you could have done. But now you've stepped back. Not out of bitterness, not to play games, not to manipulate, but out of wisdom, out of self-respect. You've realized that peace isn't something you earn by overextending yourself. It's something you protect by no longer offering it up for someone else to disrupt. That's the difference. That's the growth. As a Stoic would remind us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. You've stopped seeing silence as rejection. You've stopped viewing distance as doom. You've stopped equating detachment with coldness. Because now you understand, stillness is power. Silence is clarity. You're not being cold. You're being clear. Clear about your worth. Clear about your PS. Clear about the fact that real connection doesn't require one person to carry the emotional load alone. So, if she's wondering why you're not rushing in to fix this, if she's confused about the shift in energy, let her wonder. Because the truth is, you finally realized true love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice your emotional well-being for temporary comfort. And that realization, that's not weakness. That's power, that's peace. And that's what she feels now, even if she can't quite put it into words. Not the absence of your presence, but the presence of your absence, and through it, of what it means. Number 6. Did I push him too far? Did I push him too far? This is when self-reflection begins. She starts to revisit her tone, her words, her choices. Not because you told her to, but because your absence became the consequence. This isn't revenge. This is restraint. The Stoic doesn't punish. He allows reality to teach the lessons that words never could. At first, she might have felt confident in your silence, maybe even relieved. She assumed you were just giving her space, that eventually you'd circle back, like always. But as time stretches and your voice stays absent, something shifts. It's no longer just silence, it is distance, and that distance starts to feel like loss. Not because you said a word, but because you didn't. That's when the internal dialogue begins. Cher plays old conversations in her mind. That time she dismissed your feelings, the moment she turned cold when you needed warmth, the sarcasm she used to mask vulnerability. And now, in the absence of your energy, she starts to see it all more clearly, not through your lens, but her own. And it stings. That's the irony of silence. It's louder than any argument. You didn't leave a note. You didn't deliver a lecture. You simply stopped overextending yourself. You stopped fixing things that weren't yours to fix. You stopped sacrificing peace to maintain a connection that no longer honored your heart. A Stoic monk knows that life teaches better than words. He understands that if someone cannot see your value when you represent, then your absence becomes the only mirror they'll ever look into. You didn't disappear to hurt her. You withdrew to protect yourself. And in that quiet withdrawal, a powerful truth emerged. The man she once thought would always chase, no longer runs. Think of the man who used to text paragraphs when something went wrong, who explained himself over and over, hoping to but now he says nothing, not out of spite, but out of understanding. He realized that the only thing more exhausting than being misunderstood is explaining himself to someone who refuses to listen. That silence is not weakness, it's evolution. So, if you're wondering what she thinks when you don't reach out, this is it. She starts asking herself, did I go too far? Did I cross a line he's not willing to return from? And that question, It's more powerful than any response you could have ever given. Number 7. He's not who I thought he's not who I thought he was. At one point, she may have seen you as soft, easy to keep around, predictable. She might have believed she could push you away, pull you back, leave you hanging, and you'd still show up, loyal, available, ready to fix what she broke. You were her emotional safety net, and she counted on your consistency like a guarantee. You gave your presence without demand, your time without hesitation, and your forgiveness without question. But when you didn't reach out, when you're longer than she expected, something shifted. The version of you she relied on no longer showed up, and in that unfamiliar quiet, her assumptions began to crack. You see, silence speaks. And yours, it didn't whisper. It thundered. It said more than any emotional outburst ever could. It wasn't cold. It was composed. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about the nurturing yourself. It revealed a version of you she never prepared for. A man with boundaries. A man who doesn't seek validation by chasing what wounds him. A man who no longer feels the need to explain his worth, especially to someone who treated it like a backup plan. Let's be real. You used to be the first to reach out, to write the long messages, to say, let's talk, even when you weren't the one who created the mess. She thought that pattern would always repeat because you made it look easy, but now you've stopped apologizing for existing, you've stopped trying to fix what was once hidden, you've stopped showing up for someone who only noticed your value in your absence. That's silence. It's not passive. It's intentional. It's your new language, clearer, stronger, and far more powerful than words ever were. And this is where Stoicism quietly takes the stage, not as emotional detachment, but as emotional disciple. You didn't withdraw out of spite. You stepped back out of clarity. A Stoic doesn't beg for attention, nor does he prove himself through performance. He understands that the highest form of respect is self-respect. He seeks harmony not through control, but through acceptance. He chooses stillness over reaction, depth over drama. Nosha's left staring into the space where your presence used to be. Not because you vanished, but because you stopped being predictable. And that's what unsettles her most. Because when a man stops being easy to reach, he becomes harder to replace. When he stops targeting, chasing, explaining, he becomes a mirror. One that reflects not his weakness but her myth. One that forces her to question, did Eva really know him? The answer, probably not. Because the man you were, the one she assumed would never leave, he evolved. He grew into someone with purpose. Someone who values peace more than proximity. Someone she no longer has access to on her terms. And that realization doesn't fade quickly. It lingers. It replays. It reminds her that the man she once thought she controlled is now the man she can't forget. Number 8. What if I messed up? What if I messed up? This thought doesn't come right away. At first, she might feel confident. Sure, thought you'll reach out like you always did. But after days, maybe weeks of nothing, the silence starts to speak louder than any message you could have sent. It's not anger. It's not bitterness. It's your calm, quiet presence no longer orbiting around her. And that shift forces a question to rise inside her. Did I take the wrong man for granted? She replays old conversations. The way you listened. The way you gave without keeping score. She remembers the times you showed up when you didn't have to. And now the fact that you haven't chased, haven't begged, haven't even flinched. That's what lingers. You didn't try to change her mind. You didn't fight for a space in a life that didn't value you properly. You just let go, and that right there is where the regret starts to bloom. A Stoic man understands something most don't. Clarity often comes in the silence. As Epictetus said, if someone does not value reason and self-respect, then they do not deserve your attention. Your quiet wasn't cold. It was rooted in self-respect. You weren't trying to teach her a lesson, but your stillness became one. She expected noise. She expected effort. Instead, she got your absence. And now it's echoing in her mind. Let me give you an example. Imagine a man who used to call every time they argued, trying to fix things, to smooth over conflict. One day, he stops. He doesn't yell, doesn't block. He simply withdraws with peace and thoughts when she begins to feel it. Not the loss of attention, but the loss of a man who had depth. The kind of man you'd meet twice. So now she's wondering, what if I messed up? Not because she's sure yet, but because your silence made her confront something she tried to ignore, the weight of her own choices. And you stayed grounded. You literally teach her what your words no longer needed to. That's the quiet power of a man who knows his worth. And that's what she thinks when you don't reach out. Number 9. Should I be the one to reach out? Now the roles are reversing. Should I be the one to reach out? Your consistency has flipped the emotional script. She's holding her phone, thumb hovering over your name, debating, wondering if she should be the one to break the silence this time, wondering if you'll ignore her the way she once ignored you. There was a time when she felt in control of the rhythm, certain that you'd always come back. But that rhythm, it's broken. And now the silence that once empowered her has become a mirror, one that reflects the absence of a man she didn't think would ever stop trying. But here's the difference. You're not sitting on the other side waiting. You're not refreshing your screen or hoping she finally sees your worth. You're not playing hard to get. You've simply outgrown the need to be gotten. There's no more desperation in your energy, no more emotional debt to pay. What she's feeling now is the gravity of your growth, the weight of your presence. Even in your absence, you've learned to be still, not as a tactic, but as a way of life. You're no longer addicted to reaction. You've become grounded, unshaken, whole on your own. That stillness, that restraint, that ability to sit in the unknown without trying to control it, that is where your power lives. Now the Stoics would call it the ataraxia, tranquility of the soul, the kind of peace a man earns when he stops negotiating his value and starts protecting it. Imagine this. Months ago, a message from her would have been everything. Now, you can observe it with clarity, not craving. That shift is not coldness, it's control. That's what makes a man magnetic, not the noise he makes, but the silence he masters. And no, while she wonders, should I reach out? What she's really wrestling with is the change in energy she never expected. You've become the man who doesn't chase, doesn't cling, and doesn't bend for temporary comfort. You've become the man who can walk away, not with bitterness, but with balance. If you've ever doubted the impact of your silence, let this be your proof. You're not punishing anyone. You're simply protecting the man you've become. And sometimes that quiet clarity speaks louder than any message you could send. Take a moment and really sit with that. Your silence isn't about pride. It's about growth. You're not waiting, chasing, or proving anything anymore. And that shift, it's powerful. She feels it even if she can't explain it. If this spoke to you, drop a comment below. What part hit home the most? Or simply type, I've outgrown the need to be gotten. Let's hear where you stand. Number 10. Why can I still feel him even? Why can I still feel him even when he's gone? When he's gone, this is the final stage. The silence that once felt like distance now feels like presence. It's strange, isn't it? How someone who hasn't called, hasn't texted, hasn't said a word, can still be the loudest thought in your mind. She doesn't understand it fully. All she knows is your name still lingers in the quiet moments, in between conversations, in the pauses between distractions. You're there not because you forced your way back in, but because you never begged to stay. You see, this is what happens when a man chooses peace over pursuit. But he doesn't try to convince someone to see his worth. He simply walks in it. That kind of exit leaves a mark. She remembers the way you didn't chase her down, the way you respected her silence without mirroring it in anger, the way you didn't post for attention, didn't try to spark jealousy, didn't try to make a scene. You just disappeared with dignity. And thought it's unforgettable. Let me paint the picture for you. Maybe she's scrolling through her phone late at night, hoping for something to numb the feeling. Or maybe she's sitting in her car staring out the windshield, trying to convince herself that she made the right choice. But the silence hits differently now. It's not peaceful, it's pressing. Because while she assumed you'd come running back like before, you didn't. While she waited for the message that never came, you evolved. And now she's the one sitting with the echo of who it used to be. And that echo, it's you. It's your calm, your patience, your consistency. She remembers how safe you felt, how grounded you were. Not perfect, but, and that kind of presence doesn't just disappear when someone walks away from it. It lingers like smoke from a fire that once warmed the room. It drifts into everything by Marcus Aurelius. A Stoic man doesn't need closure from others. He becomes his own closure. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice. And that's exactly what you've done. Not by proving you're wrong, but by proving yourself right, by choosing to rise instead of react. Your silence isn't a weapon, it's a boundary. It says, I value my peace more than I value your confusion. And she feels that now because your absence isn't just about missing you. It's about feeling the weight of everything she lost when she thought would always be there. So, if you're wondering whether she still thinks of you, the answer is yes, but not because you're haunting her, because you healed from her. And in doing so, you became the kind of man who no longer needs to be remembered to know his value. But the irony, you will be remembered because of that very truth. And that's the irony of silence. It conclusion leaves the loudest echo. You didn't disappear to teach her a lesson. You chose silence because you were done speaking to someone who stopped listening. And in that stillness, something powerful happened. Not to her, but to you. You didn't collapse. You evolved. You didn't retaliate. You reclaimed. You became the man who no longer waits for closure because your peace became your answer. She may never say it. She might never text it. But she feels it. And now you know exactly what she thinks when you don't reach out. If this video gave you clarity, drop a like to let us know you're walking that path. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and your story might just be what another man needs to hear today. And if you're ready for more, check out the videos on screen right now. Each one is designed to guide you deeper into your growth, your power, and your peace. Until next time, protect your energy and keep walking in silence that speaks.